Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
This is Ed Cohen in San Diego, California, and today is Monday, 6 December. The year is accelerating towards the end. Doesn't it seem like the world is spinning faster these days? Time is just fleeting right by. So it's foggy here in Seaport Village, San Diego. The Hyatt hotels are right across the street, but when I look out that window now, you can't see them. There's dense fog, so I don't hear any planes coming or going. So I'm sure we'll get through this day. Our special guest today is an expert in business travel, management, and thinking. And avant-garde is Scott Gillespie. Welcome again.
Good to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. So where are you? You're in the Cleveland area, right?
Yeah, east side of Cleveland, Chagrin Falls. No snow, a lot of rain today. So it's a December that is a little, perhaps not too unlike the unusual weather you're having in San Diego.
So I'll tell you, up in the mountains, Big Bear is up at 7,000 feet. And Snow Summit right behind it goes up to 8,900. So we have a townhome there, and we rent it out. So there's finally going to be a snowstorm, a 2-day event coming this week. So everybody's getting excited about renting their places again, okay, because it's been pretty dry. Okay, so I'm going to read this thing, and I'm going to ask you to then go a little bit deeper. Scott Gillespie is known as a thought-provoking advisor to the business travel industry. He's known as a champion of goal-based travel management, justifiable travel, and this idea of reducing, first of all, understanding, and then reducing travel friction. Scott Gillespie wrote a book called The Guide to Travel Innovation. So let's welcome Scott. Scott, tell us about the book.
Yeah, so we may have to start over on that. That refers to my blog post.
Oh,
or my blog. Yeah, so it's not a book.
I'm a Cub Scout publisher here, so I'm thinking that, wait, this is an author. But you are.
It
just comes out in chapters rather than in a book.
Yeah, I post when I feel the urge. And perhaps we should start over just because my last name is pronounced with a hard G, not the Gillespie. So it's Gillespie.
Okay, everybody out there hear that? I'm corrected. That's okay. So Scott Gillespie, tell us about this new fad. Is it a new fad? Direct corporate booking of travel rather than through a travel management company? Or is there just a new twist?
Yeah, so it's definitely not a new fad. Corporate travelers have been booking direct with their airlines and their hotels and rental car companies since day one. The new twist, if you want to look at it that way, and I think you could, is whether or not the company, the travel manager, feels good about letting their travelers do that. And so some things have changed to kind of put those anxieties at ease. There's definitely more infrastructure available to support the direct booking in a way that's compatible with corporate travel policies and savings objectives and traveler duty of care. So what I think the trend has been more recently to recognize that corporate direct booking can work. We can keep our travelers safe. We can keep people flying in compliance with travel policies. We can still get good prices. And all of that seems to work, particularly for those travelers who really do prefer, for whatever reason, to book directly with an airline or a hotel.
So this idea of booking directly, it gets, there's a lack of control from the business department, travel management. That's what it's all about, is compliance, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's been the biggest concern over many years is, if you let your travelers book directly, you do lose that control. But What airlines in particular have been doing in the last couple of years is working with technology that will recognize a corporate traveler from, say, IBM, and recognize that that traveler is going to be entitled to corporate discounts. And so they'll see the net discounted airfares on their site, and the airline will have installed policy filters that will help the traveler understand which of those fares and cabins and products are in policy and which ones may not be, so that the traveler can make in policy decisions. And then finally, the airline has recognized the importance of getting that travel data back to the corporate travel manager and to the duty of care provider. So there are now links enabling technology, particularly Traxo comes to mind as probably the leading provider of this solution, to hand that data, that ticketing data immediately off to the appropriate sources. So now the corporate travel manager can let their traveler book directly, get negotiated discounts, book in policy, and have that data returned to the appropriate parties, all in a matter of seconds. So all those anxieties have kind of been have been addressed and resolved. So I think that's the new path forward. Ed, is enabling direct bookings that put travel managers at ease.
So I see it picking up also. This past Thursday, December 2, I took my first business trip in 22 months, short flight from San Diego to San Francisco, and had a business event that I went to at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco. It's a fabulous place. And that was the real reason I went. But it turns out the real reason was to go face to face with people who I like, should have had more contact with, but haven't, and since March of 2020. And so it was really good to be in the room. It was about 85 people, luncheon, networking as well. Lots of wine, and it was terrific, actually. And I'm ready to do more. I'm even ready to start organizing my own live meetings. But this time, because I've gotten very comfortable using Zoom and bringing people together through the screen, I'm going to do hybrid for sure, and have people in the room, but then use a big screen and Zoom to conduct a meeting with people overseas or around the country, not just in my location. And I think it's a great combination if it can be done right.
Yeah, I think that's the right point to underscore. Can it be done right? It seems easy, but to produce and organize a really well done hybrid meeting is no small task. And I think what a lot of companies are finding is that there's a real demand for meetings. There's kind of a sense that pretty much most meetings of any significant scale probably need to be in a hybrid format. But the cost and the time and the effort to produce a really well done hybrid meeting is not small. It's not as simple as simply sending out a Zoom link, right? And so companies are really beginning to pay attention to the complexity of managing and pulling off a really well done hybrid meeting, so that people inside the room get great content, and particularly people that are attending virtually feel included. They can participate in an active way. They can be called upon. Their questions and comments can be incorporated into the whatever's happening on stage. So there's no small amount of technical challenges, and I think we're going to see some really interesting technologies mature to handle these events in ways that will just become increasingly compelling to, as you say, offer more of these, so that you can attract, frankly, a bigger audience and get more input.
So I've learned how to do this kind of a program, even with 15 or 20 people on the screen. I'm better at one-on-ones for sure, but also with 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people, there's no problem. But you get beyond that, and it's I don't like that when it gets bigger and your face is that big on the screen, pulled back here, like this big, not this big, and then you can't follow, and so it loses the value. So if they can figure out how to work that out, I know with the establishment of breakout room kind of thing, but I personally don't know how to do that yet. And I would assume if there's some kind of a device tie-in using this, that could be stable, so it becomes a camera connected, then people in the room could participate rather than have to stand up, come to where the screen is and look at the green light. I don't know how to do that, but you're right. Once it's figured out, it will be a great product.
It is, and I'm sure there are a lot of companies that are working on this, and we should expect to see more of these hybrid meeting technologies kind of incorporated into the corporate travel manager's role, because there's just such an obvious overlap. Maybe not as much on the transient travel side, but certainly on the groups and meetings side of any corporate travel program. That integration is coming, and
that is a really good point. Thank you for mentioning that. Indeed. So your advisory services for the business travel industry include strategy, business strategy, data strategy, analytics, new product development, and traveler research and insights. Let's go back to, before we get into this list, this idea of travel friction.
Sure.
To me, wearing a mask on the plane is friction. But when I happen to sit in first class, so I was given the drink menu. In coach, they don't give you the drink menu. On the plane I was at, on the plane I was just on, but I was in first, and so they gave me the drink menu, and I certainly got a bourbon, and I didn't have to wear a mask, So I took my time sipping that baby, so I wouldn't have to wear that mask. But I know some people love to wear the mask because they think it's protective of themselves,
and of others. So, plenty of reasons for people wanting to wear masks, for sure.
Yeah.
But on traveler friction, so you certainly highlighted a couple of friction points, and those are going to be with us for as long as these concerns about COVID stay with us. But there's really a lot more to it, and I'm sure you know this, but just for the benefit of the audience, traveler friction incorporates basically pretty much any element that adds to the wear and tear on a traveler from the travel they're doing or have done. So things like changes in, how many time zones do you cross on a trip? That's probably going to add some wear and tear. Sitting in economy is going to add a little more friction than sitting in first class. Taking an overnight or a red eye is probably, for most people, going to add more friction. More stops, right, as opposed to direct flights, or more friction. So you can get the idea that there are elements to just about any traveler's itinerary that can be pointed out to cause more or less friction, given whatever choices they may have. And so these things, we can score them, we can add them up, we can put points against them, and we can calculate how much travel friction any particular traveler has incurred over the last period of time. And we can help companies understand, in general, are their programs adding more friction than they need to. So it's an interesting opportunity for companies who really want to concern themselves with retaining their road warriors, which many companies are, in fact, quite concerned about. They can recognize that, hey, if there are some smart things we can do to reduce traveler friction, maybe that will help us retain our valuable road warriors. And so that's the commercial benefit of understanding traveler friction.
So the road warriors, that they're not high pose, they are high producers.
Typically, yeah, absolutely. If a road warrior, the typical road warrior is spending, probably at least 30, 40 nights a year on the road, and many spend 150 or even 200 nights on the road a year. So, and they've got travel budgets to support that travel, and so the reality is no company is going to fund those travel budgets for people who aren't producing. They actually do expect them to produce more than the average person, and they typically do, judging by their salaries. So They're valuable employees. Like you say, they may or may not be the high potentials, but there's certainly people who are entrusted to get out there and do the company's business in ways that, can't be done virtually. And they're expected to deliver the goods. So a lot of responsibility and valuable resources, those people.
So let's talk about analytics. That means, well, we were just talking about, of course, high cost, but high production. And not just grinding it out, but the relationships that go with all that. That's really an asset for the company.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's the central question for many business trips. And, when is a business trip justifiable? And it probably has, a combination of decision factors in there. Things like, well, how important is the trip? How important is it to do this in person? How much trust or relationship equity do we have with people on the other side? Or how much do we need to build up? So those are some of the things that we can factor into an assessment as to how justifiable a business trip is. There are others, certainly, and I think we're going to see more effort made by companies to be sure that they approve truly justifiable trips, just because there's downward pressure on travel budgets. There is a growing concern about climate impact of travel. There's certainly probably going to be a longstanding concern about traveler health, safety, and well-being. We really need to send somebody, 3,000 miles to go have a 2-hour meeting when it could be done virtually? Well, in fact, there are many reasons why the answer would be yes. And we just expect companies to be a little bit more thoughtful about assessing that.
So new product development, tell us about your 2 new products.
Yeah, so the new product that I'm most excited about that we're developing is Trip Tester.
Trip Tester, okay.
Yeah, and it pretty much does what it sounds like. It will evaluate, it will assess, it'll test the justifiability of any business trip. So answer a few standardized questions about your meeting and the trip that might need enabled to make that meeting happen. And the tool will provide a rating. It's justifiable, it's probably justifiable, it's probably not justifiable, or it's not justifiable. And then what companies choose to do with those ratings is really up to the company. But there's some really remarkable insights that we can get.
So let me ask you a couple of questions just to be really simple here. So you assign a value to meetings, an executive, customer, where there was some friction or problem or something was a screw up. And okay, so that is value A, the 100. Let's put a number on it.
Okay.
All right. And bingo, 100, the highest. All right. And then what would be the lowest rated item?
Yeah. A good example would be a trip. So if the purpose of the meeting, right? Because we only travel, for the most part, we only travel to participate in meetings, right? That's the physical reality of why we travel. So first, what's the purpose of the meeting? And if the purpose is to inform or just share kind of one-way information, that's a pretty low value, starting value. It's kind of like,
yeah, we could do it this way.
You really need to do that in person, right? As opposed to kind of a really high starting value would be a meeting whose main purpose or activity is to sell or influence or challenge or negotiate or ideate. So you can imagine those types of activities just inherently seem more justifiable to do in person than doing virtually. So that's part of the research that we've done to help structure our assessment algorithm. It depends on understanding the purpose of the meeting.
So you hired somebody to figure out how to do an algorithm? I know how to spell it, but I don't know anything about algorithms.
Yeah, I've done this work for quite a few years, and it's my cooking in that recipe, that algorithm. Yeah.
And so is that algebra?
Yeah, roughly. Sure. There's some algebra in there.
All right, but you're assigning values and you're multiplying and dividing or whatever, right?
Right. We're assigning points to answers, and we're scoring those answers in a way that is consistent with the research that we've done on when in-person meetings are more effective than virtual meetings, and when the in-person meetings have less risk of bad outcomes. Right? So, for example, a bad outcome in a meeting might be we didn't build any trust, or we didn't get aligned on an answer, a solution, or we didn't come up with any really interesting ideas. Any of those are bad outcomes. And so we now have research that tells us when those bad outcomes are more likely and to what extent they're more likely if those meetings are done by by the virtual channel versus in person.
So this show is all about business, not about politics, but President Biden and Putin are going to have a Zoom call today or tomorrow, right? And because they don't want to travel to meet for a lot of reasons, all the complications is one, never mind the money, or the pollution of the skies, who knows? But what outcomes could they have by saying, let's say President Biden says, I'm just plain acting here. It will say, what do you have so many troops at the border of Ukraine for? What's the purpose of that? Or may I just say, Mr. Putin, that the purpose is XYZ, and I find that, as President of the US, inflammatory, and why are you doing that? And then Putin's going to come back and say, well, we don't want the US and NATO infringing on our borders anymore. We want to do this. So, okay, so that's a business problem, right? That seems to be intractable. And could that be done by video, by Zoom? That's an important issue. But will they further inflame the issue by not doing it in person? So the justifiable of the cost and the problems of travel, international travel, never mind all the politics and BS, but this is a huge issue between those two guys, and yet they're trusting video to do that. So, I mean, what do you think of that? What's the algorithm there of assigning values?
Sure. Well,
I mean, we hope it works. We hope they kiss and make up.
That the value of an effective meeting is really high, right? I mean, we want good outcomes from that meeting. And could you argue that you would get a better, a more rational, maybe a more effective outcome if it were done in person? I think a lot of people would say absolutely yes. But there must be limiting constraints as to why they're choosing not to do it in person. And so, good or bad, right or wrong, that's the choice they've made.
What it is. Right.
But I think most people would absolutely agree that both sides would probably feel better about being able to read the room and really read the body language and the intent and the emotions better if they were in person. I don't think too many people would disagree with that belief. So it's, in some ways, it's kind of unfortunate that it has to be done by the virtual channel. These are the days we're living in, and we just know that not all meetings are going to be done in person for any number of reasons.
So now let's transfer that to our business discussion here, okay? And so on my recent trip from San Diego, San Francisco, and back, I used miles. So the airline lost money on me, okay, for sure, rather than my cash flow contributing to their, but the plane was a small plane. It was an Embraer, which is the Brazilian jet, small plane, not a big 737, maybe half the size, maybe not even that, but it was full, and it was actually comfortable. So it's only an hour, so that was good. But the cost of me doing that, if I were to fill out a form for my boss, would be, okay, I had a taxi fare, I had a BART transit fare, and I had a luncheon price, and I had, but no airline expense other than bourbon, and the net of that trip far exceeded the tangible value.
The other way around. You mean the tangible value far exceeded the
Yeah,
cost
right. I got more out of
right.
being there than what it cost me,
Yeah.
especially since
Sure.
I use miles. Okay, so and then the opposite of that, diametric opposition to that, is this thing we just talked about hypothetically between the two presidents, country presidents, where they had to have a meeting because the situation's tense. It's an important thing going on, and the politics of it, of course, the imagery and the messaging of President Biden doing something about a potential drastic situation. So translate that to a business kind of situation, and it skews it, that's for sure, because the international politic meeting is seemingly far more important than solving an issue with a contract.
Sure. But I think this might help too. You can imagine that this is a really big, the situation you're describing, the political situation you're describing, is a really big issue with a lot of risk associated with it and a fair amount of urgency, right? Because this situation seems to be unfolding maybe over the next few weeks. So there's an urgency needed to get some progress in terms of communication made between the two leaders. And if your choices are in-person meeting versus virtual, you can just imagine the amount of time and effort needed to coordinate and execute an in-person meeting. You might delay it to the point where you've actually missed an opportunity to, really influence the other side in a way
Good
that you
point.
want. So
That's a really
I think
good
a lot
point.
of these, I think that a lot of these virtual meetings are actually being accepted by travelers in lieu of doing it in person because they see some advantage of doing it more quickly, getting it scheduled more quickly, getting the conversation had, maybe not as effectively as they would like, but you can just do these meetings, such as what we've done today, on pretty much the drop of a hat, as opposed to having to schedule something maybe a week or 2 weeks out before your calendars can, allow you to travel back, out and back. So there are trade-offs. There are certainly trade-offs. And I think what everyone's waking up to is the need to just evaluate those trade-offs a little bit more carefully in terms of when we decide to travel or not travel.
Hi, this is Ed, and I thank you for tuning in to Global TV Talk Show, a unit on globalbusinessnews.net. We broadcast to the world, as you know by now. So I wanted to make sure that you understand that our programs are advertising supported. We're grateful for co-sponsors, advertisers. They have a marketing budget coupled with a strong desire to be associated with our top quality program. And of course, I'm grateful. Thank you. So for the next few minutes, you're going to see some commercials. It's mostly very low key, and our prices are very, very reasonable. Our exposure for the advertisers go 12 months and beyond. Some of our advertisers have been with us since March, April of 2020. And Google Analytics has tracked over 125,000 what they call audience page views, which means you looking at this page, that's a page view. Now, if you happen to go to one of our other shows or to our radio broadcasts or to our newspaper or magazine, those become additional page views as measured by Google Analytics. And so when they say 125,000 since spring of 2020 up through Labor Day, a month ago, that's pretty good numbers. And the past 30 days, Google Analytics has measured just under 6,000 audience page views. And that, according to them, is a 42% increase in audience participation over the month of August. So thank you very much. Well, here's our advertisers, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes or so, and we'll proceed with this interesting conversation. Thank you.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by heirs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at heirs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
Hi, I'm Sergey Gorbatov.
I'm Angela Lane.
Together we are researchers, writers and practitioners in the field of human resources.
And we've also been multi-country, multi-assignment career expats.
We owe our professional development and growth to a very large extent to the international assignment opportunities that we have had.
But in a world where distributed work may become the norm, we also want to understand what will happen to the nature, duration, and purpose of international assignments.
Together with our colleague, Julian Dalzell from the University of South Carolina, we're undertaking a study on the future of expatriation.
And we'd value your contribution. You can participate in this important study by completing a simple 10-minute questionnaire.
Access the questionnaire by typing in your browser tinyurl.com/expert study. That's tinyurl.com/expert study. You can also find the link here on Ed's website next to this video.
Thank you for joining us in this study. In return for your contribution, we'll provide you with a copy of our research.
And of course, you'll be invited to an exclusive webinar hosted by Ed, where we will share our findings right here on Global Business News.
And so please go to tinyurl.com/expat study. Take the survey so that we can better understand the future of expatriation.
So what all this has been a discussion about your first new product, the travel tester, okay, of creating and measuring ROI or something like that. And so what's the other one?
Yeah, so the other one that we exhibited at the Global Business Travel Association show in Orlando last month is a product brought to market by a company called Meetings Strategy. And their product is called Data Angel. And basically it's a data quality control, RPA, robotic process automation, to monitor the keystrokes of the people entering meetings data on the front end, typically into a Cvent platform, and make sure that those data entry fields are being filled out correctly and accurately and completely. And so it's kind of a remarkable piece of intelligence that allows the meeting organizer to be sure that their meetings data will be created accurately from the get-go, which means they can now get finally really useful data out of the back end of their meetings data reporting platform. So it solves a really, really unique and valuable problem for any company that organizes a lot of meetings.
So I read recently that Cvent has been purchased by this huge company. And just I read it this past week, I think. So that's an interesting move. And the leader, whoever the spokesperson was, said the future is hybrid meetings once they figure out how to do it all better and smoother for all concerned. I recall that, and now here we are talking about it.
Yeah, no, it's very timely and topical. I think Cvent I think they're going public later this week, if I understand that correctly. And their CEO absolutely believes hybrid is the future. And so just it makes it easy to expect that, the corporate travel industry is going to see more and more technology brought to, the problem of how do we make hybrid meetings more effective, more producible, easier to organize, more expandable, if you will. I'm sure Cvent is going to be a big leader in that direction.
So with that regard, the data that you're talking about, the data points of people through keystroke measurement, so people putting in data about themselves, I guess, who they are, what position they are, where they traveled from, things like that, right?
Well, I think this is not really my field, and I would defer to my friend Kimberly Meyer at Meeting Strategy to be able to explain this. But it's more, I suspect it's more about the meeting itself, like which hotel, what are the, what kind of luncheon do we want to provide? What are the AV requirements? What's our lodging, our booking, our hotel room roster look like? So a lot of the meeting organization, it could well include meeting attendees as well. Just not as sure about what goes into those fields.
Because I was thinking, I've gone to some very large meetings like the SHRM HR meeting. I didn't go this year, I should have, but past years it's been 25, 30,000 people, huge. And, tracking all that information will be absolutely critical because even with the technology standing at the booth with a scanner rather than taking a business card, although that is very effective still, as long as it's hand sanitized or something. But having all these data points at large events will capture all that information to justify the expense of having a booth.
Yeah, so a lot of the information I'm sure that these meetings have, if they've got suppliers exhibiting, is exactly what you're talking about, capturing the marketing information of the attendees, their profiles and which sessions, education sessions they're interested in, whether or not they stop by your booth and maybe some competitors' booths, who knows. A lot of data associated with that, which means a lot of opportunity for creating valuable insights if you can get your hands on the right data.
Right. I would imagine that if you wear like a barcode, a QR code or something, because it's your badge, right? And so that means that when you walk into meeting room A versus meeting room C, the whoever is running this thing will know where you are and how long you actually were there. And that, I mean, so that's a little creepy.
Did you get bored? Yes.
That's a little overreach, but you wonder about it with face recognition things and all kinds of, were you really there? So I was looking at the show on CNN, I think it was, about facial recognition in China, for instance, how they're using it as a control device over the population. And they're letting people know that they're doing it too, which is part of their methodology. It's not secret. It's very interesting, isn't it? When you think of all that.
It's coming. Yeah, airlines are expecting to be able to use it. I suspect airports would like to be able to use it for certain things. Yeah, it's definitely a powerful technology, and there will no doubt be some questions raised around using it responsibly.
So the idea now on travel management, that's come full circle as we come to a close here. And I invite you to come back again where we can do a deeper dive once we get into the new year on how businesses are actually going to accelerate into 22, whether business travel is really going to pick up or not. We're going to see it certainly by March 30.
Yeah, so two answers to that, depending on time frame, what your baseline is. Will business travel in 2022 be stronger than 2021? Absolutely, no question. We're going to see more people believe it's safe to get back on the road and believe it's justified. So we will see more business travel this year than we did last year. But compared to 2019, which is kind of the bedrock baseline, my belief is we will never see business travel reach the same level, the same share of GDP that we did in 2019.
It was intense. I know. I did.
Yeah.
I produced my own meetings of maybe 25 different sizes, different places. And I went to another 20 or 25 all during that year. Huge expense.
It's a lot of travel.
And I was hoping to build on that to create more business. And then the pandemic hit. So, I mean, that's like a punch in the face, bang, all of that money expended in investing to build a business. And I'm just a small entrepreneur guy here. I can just imagine what the boardrooms have been thinking about. Of course, what can you do about it? It's like a black swan event. And all of a sudden, there's a loss. Now what?
A loss of revenue, which is, a decrease in expenses for others, right? One man's revenue is somebody else's expense. So what the companies are seeing that used to travel a lot is that they've been able to significantly reduce the amount of travel that they've done and still accomplish, I'll say, a fair amount, maybe a lot, in some cases, quite a lot, of what they hope to by using the virtual meetings. And so the lesson's not lost on them that there was travel being done before that was that can easily be substituted now by virtual meeting. And so the CFO's logic is going to be pretty clear. We don't need to spend money on it. We don't need to risk our travelers, and we don't need to cause any concerns about carbon emissions. So the pluses on the virtual meeting side will oftentimes outweigh kind of the marginal business trip of yesterday. So that's my reason for believing we've seen peak business travel, and now we're in for a smaller industry.
And more efficient. Scott Gillespie, thank you so much for being my special guest on Travel TV Talk Show, a unit of global business. So thank you. And please come back, and happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas.
Always a pleasure, Ed. Same to you and yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.